Hi everyone. Thanks for joining in today. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Eve.
Okay, thank you. So thank you once again for joining into the Hackface series and season for this particular month. And since it's a cybersecurity month, it was good to spread it across the month for this particular Hackfest activity. So with Hackfest, it's more like our annual conference. When there was no COVID, we did just one in-person session, and thereby afterwards we now had to do online sessions from last year to this year. So I hope we'll do a physical session next year and get a chance to meet among our speakers today. So thanks so much, Roger, for joining in to do our session, our first keynote session today. And maybe a little bit of history about him is, I think this is the right place that you came because most of the people here are still in campus, and among the few things I know about you is you're a trained campus trainer, which again, I think the different participants we have today will pick a few lessons from you. And another thing would be at least Roger has about 10 years experience in this industry, but I'll let you do the introduction. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and looking forward to having an exciting session with you today.
Thank you very much, Eve. I believe we can start.
Yes, we may.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Eve and the team, for inviting me to speak on security operations. And for this, I'm gonna base it or reference it to Trend Micro Vision 1. Eve has already introduced me. My name is Roger Skoech. I'm the sales engineer for Trend Micro East Africa. And today I'll talk about security operations in relations to Trend Micro Vision 1. Okay. If you have any questions, please, you can stop me at any point. I'd be happy to to answer any questions. All right. Cool. So my apologies, I moved that. Okay. So over the recent years, security and the business leaders have had to modify the expectations of what effective cybersecurity can achieve. And long gone are the days when all the resources were poured into protecting the corporate network perimeter. As we know that people used to sit within a certain bubble, which is considered as secure. And this, thank goodness, is thanks to the widespread adoption of cloud infrastructure and services. We also have BYOD that has come into play. And now we have mass remote working. Thanks to, again, well, it's not really thanks to it, but COVID-19 has made everyone work from home in a way. And that perimeter has become more fluid, it's become more flexible, and as well, very porous. Okay. And we have seen a number of things in the last half of this year. We've seen top threats that's affecting the industry. We've seen modernized ransomware, which is coming out with something that we call double extortion. We see bad actors exploiting vulnerabilities. We've seen COVID-related threats coming in, and as well, cloud threats also have reemerged. And no threat actors can and regularly do sneak into corporate environments. And this is networks today to steal, data, or actually use phished or cracked credentials, and also by, exploiting these unpatched vulnerabilities, right? And with this, there are so many to choose from. There are vulnerabilities that are discovered every day. We have zero-day vulnerabilities and all that. And this means then that CISOs, I believe, everyone. If any questions, please. CISOs are these, the chief information security officers and the CEOs must accept that the organizations will be breached or might already have been breached. And the key is finding those attackers before they have a chance to cause any serious damage to the organization. Now, how do we then do this? Security operations become very key when it comes to identifying these attackers. Really, the SOC team or the SOC centers comes into its own responsibility of identifying these vulnerabilities or these attackers. Their function offers a centralized and always on hub for monitoring, detecting and responding to cyber threats within an organization. And in theory, this should be a very effective way to manage the growing risk associated with threat activity. But in reality, many of these teams are struggling, to provide the CISOs the expectations, and as well suffer as a result of not just meeting these expectations at work, but also in their private lives. You'll see how this then comes together to affect the general well-being of the teams that work in such conditions. And reason for this really is because of the increased volumes of security alerts, which then lead to alert fatigue. We have management of numerous security tools, and most often these tools are siloed. So they have a siloed view or a siloed visibility. And we'll talk about that as well in the next couple of slides. The other thing is competition for skilled workforce. So the skilled analysts is an issue right now. And within Trend Micro, we are currently running a program called CPITS, which then seek to improve the number of security personnel that are available in the market. So it's our own way of making sure that we fill the gap, not just in providing these security skills, but as well also ensuring that there is that gender balance. We have seen that there is probably 1 to 3 in terms of the number of ladies or women in security to men, and we're trying to fill in that gap. Then fourthly is budget constraints, given that when it comes to security, it becomes even more costly as we try and fill in these gaps, either through technology, workforce, or even trying to make all these technologies work together. And of course, the complexity in today's advanced threats. Okay. So let's quickly jump into making some few definitions before we delve into this topic. So SIEM is one of the tools that I use mostly in security operations. So SIEM is a security information and events management. And these are software that collects and aggregates log data generated through the organization's technology infrastructure, from the host systems to applications to network security devices such as firewalls, IPSs, antivirus filters, and all that. This software then identifies and categorizes incidents and events, as well as analyze them. And then we have the other aspect, which is the SOC, which I've mentioned before. And this is a command center facility for a team of information technology professionals with expertise in information security, who monitor, analyze, and protect an organization from cyber attack. Now, SOC analyzes data shared from these platforms in order to respond to threats. And there are a number of different personas within a SOC environment. These personas include the security analyst, the SOC manager, threat hunters, depending on the maturity of this particular SOCs. Okay. Allow me to move my. Just 1 second. Right. Cool. Right. So let's look at that item here to define, and this is XDR. So XDR here is extended detection and response, which in essence is not a product, but a tool as well as a vision. So this then goes beyond the endpoint to offer broader visibility and expert security analytics, leading to more detections and an earlier and faster response in case there is a threat in an organization. And with XDR, customers can then respond more effectively to threats and minimizing the severity and the scope of a breach. And here we'll be talking about, this impact of the threats, and as well the root cause, trying to identify how the threat came into an environment. So let's look at XDR now. It can add value, in providing security for an organization. Now, XDRs are similar in functionality to SIEM, or security orchestration, automation, and response tools, which is SOAR. However, XDRs are differentiated, one by their level of integration of the products at the deployment level, the focus on the threats detection. We're more threat centric when we talk of XDR, and of course the incident response use cases. So here we get to have those capabilities of doing incident response. And this is something that's lacking in SIEM, and I'll talk about it as well as we go along. So let's look at how XDR architecture is, the conceptual architecture of XDR. XDR collects not just logs. We talked about SIEM being a log aggregator, right? XDR in this case does collect activity data from the various points within an organization. We came from the point of EDR. EDR focuses on the endpoint, but then when it collects the activity data from the endpoint, it's not just alerts or certain logs, but all the activity within that endpoint. So the threat telemetry. We have the email and web gateway. We get all this activity data as well from there. We have the CASB solutions, or IAM solutions, firewall, mobile security, and all that. And all this activity data is then uploaded to a data lake, which is then analyzed. And from this analysis, you get to make decisions on incident response. You get to do automation, either in terms of response or doing more investigation. You can create workflows, and of course the response playbooks, what typically is done by a SOC, right? And of course, you get a host of APIs, which then means that you can integrate with other solutions within an environment. Okay. Now, today, the market is probably awash with, with SIEM tools across the enterprise, across the many enterprises. But we know that the SIEM market is actually mature. But then there are challenges that we see. Many organizations either have not deployed the SIEM tools, or have failed or incomplete implementations, or only use these SIEMs either for log storage or only for compliance purposes. So there are a number of reasons why either these tools have not been completed in terms of implementation, or just use certain functionality to them. And I'd mentioned some of those, and that is cost, right? One of it is cost. The other one is the skills. Now, XDR then aim to solve these primary challenges with SIEM products. Some of these challenges, as I have enumerated here as well, include, the providing effective detection and, of course, response to the targeted attacks, the native support for behavioral analysis, threat intelligence from the various sources, and of course, behavior profiling and analytics. We know that SIEM vendors typically do not have the same level of threat detection and research analysis labs as XDR vendors. And most of these XDR products are developed using, cloud native architectures, which then means, they are made, or we are making them an alternative or competent alternative to SIEM tools that are available today, right? But then that's not to say that XDRs are going to replace SIEM in most use cases or in all use cases, but most of them, except probably things to do with log storage or compliance capabilities, that then SIEM would still play a role in a given security operations. Now, SIEM tools, as we know, are very good at collecting logs, but rarely do they improve the detection fidelity in most implementations. And this really, if we were to go deeper into it, it goes back to how much data or how much data is it picking from, or is it receiving from the various points within an environment. And of course, they also rarely use contextual indicators to combine the multiple alerts into probably a single story. And we'll talk about how XDR then gives you a story instead of just picking certain areas or certain alerts and give you piecemeal information, which then the security analysts have to piece them together. And of course, they rarely also provide the full incident response capability. So that response capability is lacking in it. And then, of course, organizations have had a very hard time developing SIEM playbooks or even building deeper and richer integrations across, a heterogeneous environment, because most tools, as we know, will generate different types of logs. And these logs, if you look at them, are not really standard. We can't say that, endpoint X and application Y running in the cloud are generating logs in a certain format. They could be in different formats, but then those trying to put all these logs together would then mean that it gives the SOC engineers or the organizations building a SOC a harder time in terms of trying to correlate all this or putting them together to make sense to the SIEM tools. And then, of course, SOA tools were then built or designed to provide integration across the multiple components. But then again, they are hobbled with a number of issues. Lack of available APIs to integrate across the environment. There are data merging issues, which I've mentioned, and of course, workflow that is disconnected from, the detection activity that then can efficiently launch response activities. And XDR then comes in to alleviate all these challenges, consolidate multiple vendor-specific security products into a cohesive security incident response platform, and then provide also products that appeal to a pragmatic enterprise security buyer. This way, we get to provide, the detection capability and response capability on a single tool, but then also enable, an organization consume or add value to either a SIEM solution that they already invested in, or a SOA solution that they have already invested in. Now, remember, these tools come in with a bit of, lacking certain capabilities, which then, for you as a security analyst or a security consultant, would then need to go in there and provide, a solution. And solution here is really to look at areas where these solutions are lacking and try and put in something that adds value to your customer. not necessarily to rip and replace, but rather to add value to what they already have in place. And it may be possible then that for SIEM and SOAR tools, a new entrants could claim the XDR capability as the industry matures. This is an argument that we have in the industry, that SIEM and SOAR tools most probably would have these capabilities going forward. But then there is complexity in building a useful XDR for vendors. And this is because, again, there are a number of plays when it comes to developing an XDR solution. In my previous slide, I mentioned a number of areas in which XDR comes in to add value, and that is from the endpoint to email to web applications, mobile, cloud, and the rest. And really to start building up and equipping SIEM and SOAR tools to provide these capabilities would probably become impractical and probably even time consuming and waste of resources. And that's why XDR solution from XDR vendors then comes in to add that value into the market. And the reality today, and this is what I've mentioned, is that there are few common standards for data integration. In terms of providing even extensive APIs that can accommodate multiple vendors to integrate their products. So we have then in most enterprises so many tools that then speak their own language or do their own stuff and provide siloed visibility, siloed view into what's happening in an environment. But what we want to eliminate, and that is with XDR, is that siloed view, having silos of visibility within an enterprise. Okay, so according to ESG, and this is what I've picked from ESG, is that XDR is the next big thing in threat detection and response, and there are 5 reasons why XDR is a good idea to move when it comes to an enterprise. One is because of the alert aggregation into a SIEM is often too noisy. There are tons of efforts that have been invested into attempting to reduce the amount of noise in a SIEM, but then again, it leads to too much uncorrelated data at the end of the day. And then secondly, the data is often apples and oranges. So correlating network telemetry with endpoint telemetry, email, and the rest is often difficult at best. And that's why all this heavy lifting from the SIEM could then be left out to an XDR solution. There's also the aspect of response, which often requires action across the multiple security controls, which then SIEM may not provide that capability. The other bit here is the SIEM is too fat, and this is, again, organizations paying too much to house all that data in a SIEM. While a layer of advanced aggregation and correlation could squeeze out more when it comes to duplicate alerts. Now, the fifth one is on the entire EDR SIEM SOC stack is too complex to even create and manage when you try and put all of them together. And again, I mentioned previously on the APIs, the multiple APIs in trying to bring all this together, right? So it's time now that we look beyond just the EDR, and this is really looking at natively correlating and analyzing telemetry from the endpoints, network, email, and cloud, and this is XDR. The reason why it's quite difficult today, and this is a research that was done, it's quite difficult to do detection and response today, is because most organizations either lack the skills or their security teams are overstretched. They are so much in terms of volume or sophistication of threats that has come in. The attack surface is grown. Now we are not just dealing with an enterprise network, but as well dealing with guys working from home or working remotely. We have, a number of tools that are being used within an organization to either detect or respond to threats. So all this, if they're not talking to each other, then it leads to a number of challenges. And one there is data aggregation and analysis, which is becoming more expensive and time consuming. I've talked about the threat landscape widening, and again, security teams can't keep up. And of course, EDR solutions lack the full range of telemetry, since it only focuses on the endpoints. But then there's more. There's the network, and there's email, and there's servers, there's cloud, and all that. Now, while multiple security solutions are deployed in most organizations, serious threats continue to avoid detection because the data collected is often analyzed in silos. So you might not be able to tell what really happened on the network if you just analyzing data from the endpoints or from email only. And that's why EDR then comes in to solve that issue when it comes to data data being analyzed in siloed environments. Now, we've seen that the cloud delivered SIEM seem to eliminate the expensive SIEM storage issues, but then still lack the context needed to accelerate detection and response times. And SIEM as well is lacking the machine learning based correlation and analysis capabilities, then leaving these efforts to the human resource, the SOC analyst within within a SOC, or even adding more tools, which then leads to overstretching the team. And of course, XDR then comes in on that bit to not only correlate across the security stack, but then also provide a clear picture in terms of correlating or putting together the telemetry from the endpoints, network, cloud, and email, so that then your SOC analysts get to see a picture of what's happening or a story of what's happening within an environment. Now, the SIEM as it is today will continue to act as a historical collection point for logs. And then XDR solutions will still evolve and probably even provide a replacement for many of the use cases that we see in a SIEM environment today. But it will not replace the SIEM as yet. But then only provide a new level of automation and also analysis that then adds more value to the SIEM and also reduce the amount of effort that is required by the SOC analysts. Okay. And XDR solutions today, today's aim of XDR solutions is really to get in front of that SIEM and correlate the events in a way that leads to faster detection. And with faster detection, it means that there is probably a faster response, but also more complete response if you already understand the full attack story, right? So why is it that XDR is becoming a big deal? And is it then different from a SIEM and the other SOAR platforms? So as we know today, SIEMs are wide yet very shallow. So it collects so much data from so many areas within an environment, but then in terms of going deeper into understanding the threat landscape or the threats that come into an environment, it doesn't get much out of it. And SIEM as it is can't really force a specific product class. It could collect data from the endpoints, but then when it collects data, say from the cloud, it might not be able to understand the data that is being fed to it. So there's that agreed upon format that you need to share that data to the SIM. And as well, the SIM or SIMs are highly limited into how it could add these new data feeds into the platform. Now there's a big factor, and this is what I've mentioned over and over in the previous slides, is that SIM has no R in it. There's no inherent response capability that is built into a SIM. So it's rather a detection tool or a fire alarm that is not connected to the sprinklers. So if you detect that there's fire, the SIM would just shout there's fire, but then no response is built into it. So it will continue, yes, to become a valuable tool in an environment, but then XDR comes in to provide or to fill in that gap where SIM is lacking, right? So XDR here, in terms of the data collection, isn't limited in terms of the specific role when it comes to XDR, but rather it is attack centric. So XDRs come in to try and identify a threat in an environment even before it causes any damage. So the aspect here is really to be threat centric, right? XDR is flexible and is able to then provide that rich and deep data analysis in new ways that may not have been foreseen. And this is really through capabilities that are provided by either machine learning or data stacking capabilities and other analysis tools that we provide within the data lake in order to fish out all these threats that may come into a given environment. Now, with a central repository that is provided for XDR, it is structured, or it is designed for unstructured and unforeseen queries. And this way, we then able to analyze different kinds of logs that come in, and thereby also identifying new kinds of attacks that can then be dealt with immediately. Remember, XDR has the response capability in it. And this is really through the advanced machine learning capabilities, also with advanced artificial intelligence capabilities that then help in providing that quality alerts or high fidelity alerts and be able to respond to these threats in the modern day enterprise. Again, this is just an illustration through this picture where a SIM only receives data from the various vendors or the various points within an environment. But then XDR, on the other hand, receives a number of capabilities as well, a number of logs, or collects a number of activity data from the various points within an environment and provide a story back to the SOC analysts. What you see here on the SIM side is these alerts reach the SOC analyst, and then the SOC analyst also queries. On the other hand, XDR then provides the SOC analyst with a story of what's happening, and the SOC analyst will then make a good response to it, or makes a decision upon that, right? So that marks the end of this. I'll then probably do a quick demo. I hope I still have a few minutes. I'll do a quick demo for you just to show you how XDR solutions work in our environment. Right. Second. Cool. I hope you can see my screen, everyone.
Yes.
Right. So XDR through Vision One has a number of. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. So XDR has a number of applications that then help SOC analysts in responding to threats. But then today, I'm gonna focus on the workbench. So what you see here is Trend Microvision One, which we've talked about extensively, and how it can help in security operations. But then we will focus only on one area, and that is on the workbench. So when it comes to Vision One, it then gives you this workbench, which is rather an investigation console. It will highlight for you threats or investigations that are ongoing, and then also prioritize for you, giving you the severity, whether it's low, medium, high, or critical. And with this, we would go to the workbench area on Vision One. And within this, you would see a number of queries or investigations that are being run. Give it a second to load. Right. So all these are investigations that are running. It would give you the score, and that is the severity score, the workbench ID, the model, the threat model that is being used, the model severity, the impact scope, and with impact scope, it will tell you how many servers are affected in your organization, how many endpoints, how many users, how many email accounts. Okay. And then of course the date created and all that. So going right into one of them, allow me to choose a different one. No worries, I'll do with this. So on opening the workbench, which is your investigation that's ongoing, what you would see here is a summary of the attack. In this case, it shows you the early indication of R-Evil ransomware, and that's via Kaseya VSA. Gives you a bit of info about it, the score for that severity, the impact scope, how many servers have been affected, users and users. And within it, it also gives you or highlights for you some few information about it, right? So with this, it also shows you the MITRE attack framework technique that has been used by the attacker. It gives you the date, gives you the object that is being highlighted here. And when you come to this sun key diagram, you would identify that there is the endpoint that is being shown. And within this endpoint, you can either get more details about it, right? So you can get more details about it. Or if you right click on it, you could either pivot off to a new search in terms of investigation, or even respond directly to it. So you'd either isolate the endpoint or start a remote shell into that endpoint to do your investigation, or even run a remote custom script, right? So with this, if you say you want to see more detail, you'd be able to tell the type of the endpoint, the host name, the IP address. You could tell, the operating system, then the version, and who is managing it. But then when it comes to the file in question, you could either collect the file for analysis within your SOC, or even submit it for sandbox analysis, right? And there are other things as well, like the process that was running. Okay, this is still a file. Let's say for the user that's affected, you could pivot this user and do a search as well. In case this user probably had been compromised, you would then be able to tell by doing a new search into it, see what else has been done using this user within the environment. If it sees lateral movement or spread of the virus or the malware within the organization, you then are able to actually tell the impact that this particular threat has caused in an environment. Okay, so that's on when it comes to the endpoints and the users. I've not been able to show you guys on email. If I have probably a few more minutes before we get into question time, I could show you the capabilities that are available within threat investigation when it comes to email. So there's one for email here. Okay. So again, within this, what you see here, emails that have been sent, and as we know today, most of these threats are either COVID-19, related, or anything to do with that, either vaccine and all that. So what you see here is a possible spear phishing attack on high-profile user within, and this is via a link. You'd also see that it's mapped to MITRE ATT&CK framework technique. And this is the email. So it's COVID update. You can get the response capabilities as well here by either quarantining the message. And if you quarantine the email, you'd also be able to select the users that was sent to. So you can quarantine for a single user or to multiple users, or you could also delete that message. There's an option to delete that, and it says that it comes in. It's via a link. So there's a URL that's been shared with these users, and with this you can add it to the block list, so that whoever else receives that email, or that email comes again through email, you would be able to, all the solutions within the environment would be able to block it without reaching the users. This was the targeted user. It's called team. You can also pivot off this user by doing a new search and a new investigation. The sender, in this case, who is the offender, would also get a response capability. You can block the sender so that they are not able to send any emails again to your organization, right? And again, when it comes to the emails, you can see you either respond through quarantine or deleting the email message. Okay, so that marks the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'll now take questions.
I think, Roger, we had one question from one person.
Great. Let me see on the chat. Okay, so this
what is meant by SOC Tier 2 and 1?
Okay, so SOC Tier 2 and 1. So there is maturity. There's a maturity level when it comes to SOC, right? So the way SOCs mature is we have SOCs that are probably implemented certain tools, or organizations that have implemented certain tools within their environment. And these tools include what I've mentioned before. This is what we call sensors in an environment, or protection tools. It could be an antivirus, could be an EDR solution, could be an IPS, could be a firewall. And from this point, an organization has already started their SOC maturity journey. But then you would also get organizations that have already built a SIEM solution. They already acquired a SIEM solution within the environment, but they're only using it either for data collection, log collection, and for compliance purposes. They might not be doing any active threat hunting or threat sweeping capabilities within that organization, and that would probably be considered as, you know, a tier one SOC. But then we have now, you know, enterprises that have a SOC that, you know, SOC and a complete SOC team that would include threat researchers. They would include teams that do threat sweeping. They have teams that do threat response. They have blue teams. They have the red teams. They also have the purple teams. Now, this a SOC. They then consider that they probably moved up the ladder towards you know, SOC tier 5 or something, yeah, or SOC, you know, level 5. So that's how the SOC maturity level goes.
Okay, thanks, Rogers. I think that's quite a fulfilling answer, because basically it would be around the maturity of an environment. And
Yes.
thank you so much for the session. This was the first day I've really Googled XDR, but I like the outlook where it's able to correlate. Yeah, I know. It's able to correlate the different events from different platforms, where I think
Yes.
organization right now moving to cloud, maybe you have on-prem services and things like that. So with this solution, you're able to have kind of one place to monitor all that. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a good solution. And
thank you very much, Anne. No, Evelyn.
Okay, thank you so much. So last, I wanted to introduce someone from your team also.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I think we have someone called Nick Dennis. So we've been working together to support the cyber talent program. Hi. The different CTFs that students have been working on, and I believe some of the students here have participated in it. Maybe you want to add something or say something to the team, so we can hand over to the campus lead, who's Nancy. Sorry, you can unmute now.
Thanks, Evelyn, and thank you, Rogers. That was fantastic. It's a pleasure to see you in action, Evelyn. We've worked together over the last couple of years on various projects, so it's great to see a gathering like this, and especially a gathering which is focused on the campus, the next generation of cybersecurity experts that are going to be deploying tools like the Vision One tool, the XDR tool that Rogers has just described and demonstrated so well. It's a pleasure to work with Hacks in particular. This is probably, let's hope, right? This is a new interim period of doing things like this remotely. And then you'll go back to face-to-face Hackfests. But there's one thing that's really nice to see here is I can see here there's some of our current trainees on our certification program in IT security. So I know there's people in this room now from South Africa, from Nigeria, from Ethiopia, who are able to dial into this kind of remote session, right? They wouldn't have been able to meet. So that's one small plus to the many downsides of this last 2-year pandemic nightmare. So it's yet another Zoom room, but it does have its upsides. The relationship that we have together with Trend Micro and Hacks is a new relationship, and one that we hope we can grow, because I think that Trend Micro is a big global company. We have a few people, feet on the ground, like Rogers, and a few colleagues in various countries, including Kenya and Nigeria and other countries where we don't have anyone, right? Ethiopia and so on. So we need to work with local partners to learn about what's going on, to learn from the new talent, what's coming through, to learn from customers. And you know more than us Well, you certainly know more than me. Rogers knows more than everyone, but you certainly know more than me what's going on in Kenya in terms of the next generation of talent, in terms of customers, threats, environment, and so on. So it's really important to build these relationships, and it's a pleasure to be here, to see so many people online, 40 plus people joining the call. And that's enough. That's enough for me, because you didn't expect me to come and take up time. So thanks very much, Evelyn, and thank you, Rogers, for presenting the company so beautifully. Have a great rest of the session.
Okay, thank you so much, Nick, and for the support accorded for this particular Hackfest. So
Pleasure.
I think I'll hand over to the campus lead, who's Nancy. So you can pick it up from there from me. Yeah, over to you, Nancy.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity, and so humbled to have speakers from Trend Micro. It's quite an honor. So I think I'll just give a brief overview of what the campus program entails. So the SheHacks campus program is a drive by SheHacks Kenya, and to train and mentor campus students in cybersecurity. We noted there's quite the gap between what students learn in class and what the industry needs in cybersecurity, right? So we decided to come up with the campus program that will help us to mentor and train and guide these students to learn roles and know what exactly they want to do in cybersecurity. So the campus program was launched officially last year, 2020, and it has grown from one university to supporting around 30 universities countrywide, with a total number of 90 ambassadors throughout the country. So the campus program is evenly distributed across the 8 regions that we have in Kenya. And it has, we've been having, as part of the program, we've been having sessions every other week. Okay, because of COVID, we've been having them virtually. So the general sessions, we've been having them every Tuesday of the week. And these sessions are led and trained by the campus students. We felt this would be a really good opportunity for the students to challenge themselves, to train, to also be able to interact with one another and challenge themselves to participate and actually lead these sessions. Part of what we have included in the program is we've been inviting industry experts to come and speak to the students, to guide them, to give them an overview of what they're going to expect once they join the cybersecurity field as professionals. So aside from that, for the ambassadors that you have in the different universities, they've been able to come up with their own cybersecurity clubs. We have guided them through this. They have come up with their own cybersecurity clubs, created schedules for these clubs so that they can have their own in-person sessions as the respective university. And we've been able to visit some of these universities, and we see what they do, how we can guide them, we give them guidelines on how to lead these sessions better. And through these sessions, through these clubs that these ambassadors have been able to create in their respective universities, it has helped us to be able to support many more students in the different universities. Like, the passion for cybersecurity has remarkably grown. And it's been a beautiful thing for us as a SheHacks team to see this growth, because apart from the team that we have right now, the universities that we are supporting, we're still having other university management teams from the different universities reach out to us, and they want their students to be part of the program. So I would say it has really helped the students to acquire these technical and non-technical skills, because we believe we really want to mold them beyond being really good behind screens. We give them the non-technical skills, also the soft skills. How do you market yourself? How do you brand yourself? We've been guiding them through all these things. And we've also been able to impact leadership skills, which we think is also very important in this field. So in a nutshell, that's what the campus program has been about from last year and this year. And we're looking forward that it will only get better and grow over time. So yeah, basically that's the campus, the SheHacks campus program in a nutshell. We've been getting support from our partners, and it's been amazing. And I'm sure we have so many students who are part of our program in this call. So yeah, we're really happy to see the growth that these students have been through. And in short, that's the entire cybersecurity community has remarkably grown here in Kenya. So at this point, I'll invite Tony, who will invite one of our campus ambassadors, who has a session, who has a demo on web API pen testing. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Nancy, and hello everyone. My name is Tony Gidra, and basically we lead Oh, I got my mic back again. So, like I said, I'm Tony Gidra, and basically we lead the SheHacks campus program together with Nancy. I think she has talked everything about the program. Maybe what I can add is we hold sessions every Tuesday of the week. Basically, this to guide and give insight to students who feel like they want to kickstart their career in the security field. So today, being the Hackface campus edition, we'll be hosting Leo Waweru. He's a student from Meru University who will take us through web API penetration testing. Basically, this is a type of ethical hacking whereby you assess the architecture, design, and configuration of web applications. So, Leo, maybe you can just take over.
Oh, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, I had been muted. That's why I could not talk to you. So I'll start by sharing my screen. Okay. I hope I just need confirmation you can see my screen.
Yes,
we can.
Okay, thank you very much. So good evening to you all and welcome to my presentation. It will be a brief presentation on web API penetration testing. So who am I? My name is Leo Waweru. I'm a fourth-year undergraduate student taking Bachelor's of Science in Computer Security and Forensics in Meru University. I'm also a part-time web application security researcher and a bug bounty hunter. In this presentation, I'm just going to, it's a small scope presentation. I'm going to cover web API penetration testing. Among the things we're going to cover is how to conduct reconnaissance and also the testing. So moving right into it, I know most people here and who are my fellow students, most of them don't know what is an API. So basically, in a nutshell, an API, it is a software, it is a software intermediary that allows two applications to talk to each other. Let's say each time you use something like Facebook to send a message, or maybe you are checking the weather, you're basically using an API to do that. A simplistic illustration of an API is when you go to a hotel, you make you give the waiter your order, and the waiter goes to the kitchen to get the food. So basically, in that situation, the waiter is acting as the API. And in this illustration, you see, so the web application talks to the API. The API talks to the backend server, which then fetches the information from the database. So before this, we were using a traditional approach in web technologies, where the web application used to interact directly with the web server. So when we talk about API penetration testing, these most of you who are in security, you know about the WASP top 10 list, but the most common one is for web application, but there's one for APIs. So some of the bugs you want to look, or some of the 10 bugs as per 2019 that you want to look for when you're conducting an API penetration testing is, one is broken object level authorization. So in this, APIs, they tend to expose endpoints that handle object identifiers, creating a wide attack surface for level access control issues. So broken object level authorization attacks are attacks that the attacker manipulates the access control, manipulates the access control features, manipulates the access control features of the API. Also, a very common term you could use to refer to broken object level authorization vulnerabilities is IDOS, or insecure direct object level, insecure direct object references. The other type of vulnerability you want to look for is broken user authentication. I will just go very fast through them. So broken user authentication is where authentication mechanisms are not properly implemented. So a user will try to exploit the implementation flaws to assume maybe another user's identities, maybe temporarily or permanently. The other vulnerability you want to look for is excessive data exposure. So by this I mean the API or the application that is programmed to give a certain amount of information. So what you look for is, what happens is in excessive data exposure is developers might have not secured all the endpoints properly, and you can use maybe this is most commonly in server responses. You might be querying a specific API endpoint, and then you might realize that it's actually giving out a lot of data than it's supposed to be giving out. The other one is maybe lack of resources and late remitting. So this is where there's not enough measures that have been implemented to prevent automation. Number 5 is broken function level authorization. So these attackers exploit this to gain access to other users' resources, or maybe administrative functions. So there's something called lateral movement and horizontal movement. So you might want to gain a privilege of maybe a user who is at your level, or maybe a user who is above your level. So the other one is mass assignment. The other one is security misconfiguration. The other one is injection. This one can involve SQL injection, command injection. It can also be used for SSRF. The other one is improper asset management. And the last one is insufficient login and monitoring. So when you want to conduct a penetration test, as I remember, I was taught in my first year, I was taught that the very first step you do is reconnaissance before you move to any other step. So the first thing you're going to do to learn is how you conduct reconnaissance when you are doing API penetration testing. So the first thing you have to first identify the architecture of the API that you are testing. So it can be a REST API, it can be a GraphQL API. At the moment you see something like GraphQL, you look for something, for some common vulnerabilities like introspection. There's SOAP, there's XML RPC. The most common one is a very common one, and there's JSON RPC. And the list does not stop at that. Depends on the type of the scope, the type of API you are interacting with. So the other thing you want to check is the documentation. OpenAPI, which was formerly known as Swagger, the documentation for OpenAPI is usually at the openapi.json endpoint. So there you can get all the information, and this is somewhere like this is very useful for people like bug bounty hunters, because I remember one of the P1s, the second P1 I got in background was something I actually went to the documentation, and actually at the end of it, what yielded was exposed client ID and secrets. So that you can see that is that once an attacker gets access to such information, they can do a lot of things with it. The other API is GraphQL. This is just one of the links where you can go and learn about GraphQL. Or if there's no maybe an official documentation, you can try to use Google Docs to maybe check where the developers put or the endpoints where the documentation was put when the developers were deploying it into the live environment. The other thing you want to do when you are doing, you want to perform API penetration testing, is you want to search for API endpoints. And this one is actually, I would say this is what is one of the leading contributor of bugs and attacks and a lot of data breaches, because one thing is most endpoints, developers might not be aware of some endpoints that might be leaked, maybe in JavaScript files or maybe in responses. Most developers might not even be aware. Attacker will take something like Babsuit, something that they will use to proxy the traffic, and then they will use it to check the server responses. And after checking the server responses, they're going to maybe search for specific keywords. And those keywords, they're going to yield maybe endpoints or maybe specific routes that will give out more data than you're supposed to give. So I would associate the endpoints with mostly sensitive data exposure. So a very simple illustration here of searching for API endpoints. One, you can use something like a Wayback Machine. I'm sure if you've been around and if you've been attending SheHack's campus sessions, we've talked about, I think I was the first person to present about Recon. And I talked about using Wayback URLs to get maybe archived URLs that were being used by maybe a company. Depends on the scope or maybe the target of your penetration test. The other thing is you could use something like path manipulation. So if you know an API has an endpoint of API /v1, you could try API /v2, API /v3, or maybe even API /beta. You never know what that might yield. The other thing you could, I've already spoken about this, you could try to use Google Docs. They are very useful, and most of the times they yield to success. The other thing is GitHub. This is if you are a penetration tester or a bug bounty hunter, this is one of your best friends. And there's no way you'll say you are a penetration tester and you know nothing about GitHub, because most companies and most developers from companies, they usually push code into GitHub before removing information that could be used by attackers against them. So this is actually a haven for a lot of maybe endpoints. The other thing is you could use something like these. There are tools like Trufflehawk and there's another one called SSH Git. These tools regularly mine for secrets that are being, and in this case, API endpoints that are being pushed into GitHub every second of every minute. So the other thing you want to do is when you are conducting a penetration test, when you're conducting recon for a penetration test, is endpoint enumeration. By endpoint enumeration, I mean you have to fuzz the API endpoint of the maybe application you are dealing with, and this could range from GraphQL, OpenAPI, or maybe other applications. And here, as you can see, there is a word list showing where you can get the content for fuzzing. And if you are looking for maybe tools that could be used for endpoint enumeration, you could use something like FFAF, which is very fast. Actually, it's actually one of the very fastest fuzzers I know. There's something like mass, and then there is it's nuclear. It came to save a lot of people, because all you need is that just to point it to a target. It's going to do the rest for you. There's Arjun. This one is used for parameter enumeration. There's ParamSpider, ParamMiner. These are Babsuit extensions. There's another tool that is currently it's the most popular tool when it comes to API fuzzing. It's called KiteRunner. The biggest advantage with KiteRunner is that it's built purposely for API fuzzing, and it has a huge word list for API penetration testing and things like that. So after we are done with recon, now we move straight into testing. Because of the short time was given for this presentation, I'm only going to cover two types of vulnerabilities that you might look for when conducting a penetration test. The first one is broken object level authorization, which is in short known as BOLA. So in this type of vulnerabilities, an attacker substitutes the ID of their own resource in the API call with an ID of a resource belonging to another user. A simple example is, let's say you are using you're using an API endpoint where it has given you an ID like let's say 35. You are the way the developer created the application, you're only supposed to access the resource that is at point 35, but an attacker could change 35 to a different number and try to see if they can access a resource of another person without their authorization. So the lack of proper authorization checks allows attackers to access the specified resource. This attack, which I had previously stated earlier, is known as an idle or an insecure direct object reference. So a simple use case here is an API call. Parameters use the ID of a resource accessed through an API. So for example, this endpoint API/shop financial info. So an attacker will replace IDs of their resource with a different one which they guessed through. They will change this value API shop 1 to API shop 2. And they will try to get the financial information of API shop 2. So the API does not check. This means if proper authorization checks have not been put into place, the API does not check permissions and lets the call through. So the problem is aggravated if this can be enumerated. This is what I was talking about. If, like, let's say this, you see an ID is 1, 2, 3, you can decide an attacker will take something like a backsuit intruder or maybe a turbo intruder and try to enumerate this to maybe 1,000 times. Broken object level authorization can also be used to, it also causes risk of conditions, but I'm not going to talk about that today. So a visual illustration of this is when you make a request to an API, so the first thing you're going to check the response. So first thing you have to check is if the endpoint receives an ID. The other thing you have to understand, maybe if the ID is it's a UUID, or if it's encoded or if it's not encoded. The other thing is after you understand the pattern, or maybe you can, in this case, I always do this when I'm testing for broken object level authorization. I usually create 2 or more accounts. Like, let's say if I'm testing it on maybe Instagram, I'm going to create 2 accounts, or maybe if it's another platform, I'm going to create 2 accounts, one with administrator privileges and one with normal user privileges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, after you have understood the pattern, you're going to move to the next step, which is you'll start tampering with the input or the values that are there. So maybe you're going to start, if you see the value is maybe 50, you're going to input a 49 or maybe a 51 and see if you're going to get a 43 or maybe a 41 or maybe a 200, which means you are successful. So the other thing you need to check is the type of data that is being used to access the resource. Is it a number? Is it a string? The other thing you need to know is what type of method it is, because if it's a get or is it a post. So the other thing is you could try to duplicate. Maybe this mostly applies to post request. You could try to add other values into the request and try to see if you're going to get more information, or maybe you can even use this for maybe SQL injection. There's these vulnerabilities that was vulnerable with Spring Boot actuators, where you could use SQL to add a value, and then which you could then escalate it to remote code execution. So you could look for things like those. You could check if you can add things as arrays and stuff like that. The other thing is you could try to use a wildcard. I know this is something that you might not expect, but when conducting a penetration test on maybe bug bounty hunting, you have to manipulate values, because you never know which one could yield a response which will be of value to you. The other thing is cross-deployment IDs. So identify other deployment hosts of your target API, enumerate resources, and test those IDs on your target API host. So the other thing I want to talk about here is the tools you could use for this for testing. Broken object level authorization, mostly I tend to say there is no tool that could be used to maybe detect this. You cannot use something like OpenVAS or something like this. I like to use, when it comes to broken object level authorization testing, my best friend is usually BAP repeater, because that is where you are able to manipulate values and request everything. So some of the tools you could use if maybe you're testing for REST APIs extensions in Babsuite like Automatrix, there's Authorize, which is very user-friendly. There's Analyzer. If you're testing for something like GraphQL, you could use something like AutoGraphQL, InQL. Yeah, so the other type of vulnerability I want to talk about when you are conducting a penetration test is excessive data exposure. Maybe the API endpoint is giving a lot of data than it's supposed to give out. So the API may expose a lot more data than what the client legitimately needs, relying on the client to do the filtering. If attackers go directly to the API, they have it all. So a use case of this is the API returns full data objects as they are stored in the backend database. So the client application filters the responses and only shows the data that users really need to see. So attackers can call the API directly and get also the sensitive data that the UI would filter out. So this mostly is usually this mostly is usually a mistake that is done by developers. Maybe they did not the system did not go did, was not tested before being deployed. So if an attacker, or in this case a penetration tester, is looking for this vulnerability, you're going to first know what information am I supposed to be getting when I query a specific endpoint. What information am I supposed to get when I query maybe an endpoint about maybe info or something like that? Am I what specifically am I supposed to get? And after you have known that, that is the only way you're going to this excessive data exposure. Maybe it's something that if you are in this field of penetration testing, maybe it's something you have encountered, but you are not able to discern it from, because you are not able to identify if that's the correct amount of data you're supposed to be getting, or you're getting more than you're supposed to be getting. So a visual representation of this is one, you check if the API returns full data objects from database with sensitive data. You could use, if you're using something like Babsuite Pro, you could maybe search for keywords like API secret key in the server responses. The other thing is you compare client data with the API response to check if the filtering is done by the client side. This is usually this is usually very dangerous, because let's say I'll give a very simple example. When you are doing something like password reset, password reset, the token is supposed to come from the server side, not the client side. A very simple bug is you take Babsuite and you proxy all the traffic, and then you go to the password reset feature of the website you are visiting, or maybe what you're interacting with, and you put your details to reset your password. And what you do after that is, before clicking, in this case you use two browsers. after you have reset, you open, maybe the token is supposed to go to your email so that you can, the password reset link is supposed to go to your email so that you can reset your password with it. Now, in this case, when you're using maybe two browsers, or maybe you're using Firefox and you're using Firefox containers. So what you do before you open your email with another browser that is not proxied, and then you check the password reset token that was, you go and copy the password reset token that was sent, and go, and if you're using Bubsuit Pro, you go and search for it inside Bubsuit Pro. If you find it in Bubsuit Pro, that means it's a vulnerability which can be used for account takeover, because it means that in that application, the password reset token is coming from the client side instead of the server side. That is a very simple, and it's actually I think a priority one vulnerability in background. The other thing is you sniff the traffic to check for sensitive data returned by the API. These could be done using Bubsuit, like I've said, or maybe WASP ZAP proxy. And when it comes to excessive data leaks, a lot of time, these sensitive information leaks are caused by precisely the problem I described earlier. The server is too permissive, and returning the entire API response from the API server instead of filtering it before forwarding it to the user. So with that, I have come to the end of my presentation. So some of the key takeaways I would like my fellow students and maybe aspiring penetration testers, people who want to go out there and hack APIs. One, if you want to hack something, always understand your attack surface. Understand what you're dealing with. And that is why I said the importance of recon. If I usually use something, I usually use a quote by Abraham Lincoln: if you're given 6 hours to chop down a tree, I use 4 hours to sharpen my axe. And this is where recon comes in. The other thing is identify more attack surface. Once you're dealing with APIs, you realize that they are very broad, and through fuzzing, you'll be able to uncover more content than you are expecting to uncover. The other thing is test for different authentication methods. This is maybe if you're using maybe basic, or maybe if you're using the JWT, or maybe if you're using the OAuth for Google. The other thing is find get endpoints for post and put request. If you ever see a put request, this means that you can add data to the server. And if you are able to do something like this, and you find it's arbitrary that any attacker can perform these are vulnerability. The other thing is you look for API security misconfigurations. Like I said earlier, and I'm going to reiterate this, developers usually don't know, most of the times they don't know the number of endpoints that are out there, that are leaked out there maybe in JavaScript application, and in JavaScript files. So most of the times you'll find a lot of bugs are usually caused through a lot of API bugs through misconfigurations. So these are some of the references I used in making this presentation. Again, I had to make it super short. So in case anyone wants to wants to talk about this at length or maybe in depth, you're free to reach me out reach out at me at maybe Leo the Kenyan. I believe my Twitter handle has been shared on the She Hacks Twitter post. So we can definitely talk more about this. And API penetration testing is very interesting. And once you get into it, you just want to keep on going. So with that, I think I've come to the end of my presentation. Unless there are any questions, I would be very happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Leo, for the amazing presentation. It's really nice to see one of us students from the campus program do amazing things. So it's really, we're really happy. The presentation, thank you so much for taking up the challenge to do this presentation today. So unless there are questions, maybe I'll introduce the next team of panelists that you have, the Fossec team. So Fossec is a cybersecurity awareness platform that focuses on creating cyber awareness within our community. And we have the 4 ladies that founded Fossec and who are very passionate about cyber defense. And they have various skills on the blue team side of cybersecurity. So we are honored to have our panelists. We have Anne, we have Caroline Getonga, we have Doreen, and we have Anne Rotich. So at this point, I'll give you guys the platform to take us through. And thank you so much. We're honored to have you here.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So, us as Fossec, we're going to take you through privacy, anonymity, and other impossibilities. Just a quick introduction of what Fossec is. Fossec is a cybersecurity awareness platform that focuses on creating cyber awareness within our community. So, as mentioned, it's made up of 4 ladies who are interested on the various sides of defense, of cyber defense, and as you can see, we have our socials there, our LinkedIn and our Twitter handles. You can follow us, as well as the socials for Fossec. So another thing about Fossec, these 4 ladies were part of the National Cybersecurity Training Program, Cohort 3 at ICRAL Innovation Hub. So we are a product of the National Cybersecurity Training Program. So a quick introduction on what our agenda today would be focusing on. We're going to differentiate between privacy and anonymity. We're going to check which comes first between privacy versus convenience. We're also going to check on the various concepts in privacy and anonymity, as well as prioritization when it comes to privacy and anonymity, and how to enforce better privacy and anonymity. So just a quick introduction on what privacy is. Would say privacy relates to any right you have to control your personal information and how it's used. So privacy focuses on what data should be collected, what are the permissible uses. So when it comes to what data should be collected, I'm sure no one would want to have their personal identifiable information, such as their health records or their personal financial information, available online or in the public domain. So also privacy involves around who has the right to access this information, as well as who this data should be shared with and how long this data should be retained. If it's a data controller, let's say a vendor or a sales company, how long should they have your information or anything related to your information with them? So out of this, we're going to check on the various importance of privacy. I'm sure most of the people think that privacy is not a key factor or really very important, because we might think that we don't have information that would be important to someone else. But basically, anything that involves around you being a person or a human being means that your information could be used for identity theft or other malicious activities by the attackers. So we're going to check on why privacy is important, and one of it being that privacy could give us the power to choose our thoughts and feelings and who we share them with. Sometimes freedom of speech comes with privacy, because you won't want to share your expressions or ideologies around something sensitive and people know who exactly you are. Also, privacy helps protect our information, because we don't want to share this information, as mentioned earlier, publicly available, making it available to the public domain. Also, privacy helps us to protect our physical safety. This relates to our geolocation. Let's say where our home is, where we are at a specific period of time. Would not want people to out there or in the public domain know where our location is exactly at real time. So privacy helps us prevent this. Also, privacy helps us to protect our individuals or our businesses, entities, because sometimes this information could be helpful to our competitors. If you're running a business or you have a business entity, definitely you won't want your R&D, that is your research and development projects or ideas, to be out there for your competitors to have, or your intellectual property. They could use this to go ahead of you, and you would lose your customers in the market. So that is where privacy comes in. So also privacy helps us to be free. And I would pose a question to you. Could we really be free or have free will without privacy? So this is something we can discuss on at the end of our presentation. Also, we're going to check on what anonymity is, and would say that anonymity is when nobody knows who you are, but potentially they know what you're doing. We could really relate this to, say, a virtual private network, that is a VPN. Whatever you do online, using a VPN would help you do whatever thing you're doing safely, anonymously, without someone knowing who you are, but you're able to execute whatever things you want to do. So that is what would say anonymity is. And anonymity as well is a very important thing, because it helps us to protect the person and the message. This could be protecting what is being said and who has said it. Maybe sometimes, as I had explained earlier, you won't want to be disclosed on a sensitive topic or an agenda. So anonymity comes in here, because the person who's done the communication, as well as the information being said, could be made anonymous and tied to someone specifically. So anonymity also helps us to maintain our privacy when you're forced to give up control of our private information. And we know that we cannot trust the entities to whom we give the information. So we clearly see that anonymity also helps us to get free services without sacrificing our privacy. Maybe you're trying to access some services online because we're in a digital world, and they might be asking for many information about you, let's say your personal identifiable information, your ID, all this information that can be used by someone else for identity theft. So by being anonymous, we see that this would protect your privacy and someone won't know much about you. So out of this, we see that anonymity and privacy are really key things in our digital world. Basically, because of the pandemic, I'm sure every one of us has interacted with various things virtually or online. And out of this, we see that these are two key things that we should really be keen about, and we should pay our close attention and focus on them to ensure that we are keeping our personal lives private and also anonymous. So at this point, I want to welcome Doreen to take us through other concepts in privacy and anonymity.
Thank you, Anne. Good evening, everyone. My name is Doreen Ochung. I'll be taking you through concepts in privacy and anonymity, as well as something else to come. So with, as Anne has taken you through privacy and anonymity, there are some concepts that, you know, for you to maintain your privacy and anonymity online, you should be aware of. So there is pseudonymity, which is the use of a false identity or a substitute for a real one. So this is where you can set up a profile for when either you'd want to register on sites that it might be a one-off, or you would just like to get a particular link. So it's something that you're not going to use in the long term. So for you to maintain your privacy, it would be better to adopt, a substitute identity. For example, you have Dwayne Johnson, who's also The Rock. So The Rock would be said to be a pseudonym. And then we have unlinkability. Unlinkability is where the relationship between two activities can't be identified. As Anne had mentioned, when you're using a VPN online, let's say you're accessing various information across different sites. So because you're using a VPN and either your identity is constantly changing or your IP address, therefore you can't link activities to belong to one person. So basically that is unlinkability. And then we have an observability, which is where a user's activity goes unnoticed. Here you're accessing different services or applications or performing activities online, and it goes unnoticed. So your identity stays hidden and maintaining your anonymity. And then we have undetectability, which is inability to distinguish whether a user exists or not. Here you may be using a pseudonym or a pseudo identity, or it could be a bot. So whoever is collecting this data can't really ascertain whether the data belongs to a legitimate user or one who's illegitimate. And then to move on to privacy versus convenience. So in our daily lives, we all have certain activities that we do, subconsciously, whether you're scrolling through websites or you're registering for certain platforms using certain applications or services. So subconsciously, one thing that we all do, and I'm definitely guilty of, is accepting all cookies. So when you accept all cookies, basically you're letting your data be collected, whether it's your location or what device you're using, instead of taking your time to actually choose which data that you want to give. So it's, for convenience, it's easier to just accept all cookies. Then we have reward cards, which you see, for example, if you go to Naivas and you have your loyalty program, they have their loyalty program. So you just give them your number, and then you get points which you can spend when they get to a certain particular amount. So most of us just do this because we know we are getting points which we'll redeem at some point. But in real sense, they are collecting data on how much we spend, when we spend, what we buy, if we buy new things, if we don't buy it again, probably from the analysis they can tell, probably we didn't like it. So all this information is collected on you, and you may not really be aware. On your end, you just think, oh, I'm getting points for my loyalty for shopping with them that I will redeem at the end of the month. And then we have familiarity. So you're supposed to be, you want to maintain your privacy online, but if you're looking for a browser to use, for you to be more private, you would want to choose either DuckDuckGo. So, but with DuckDuckGo, their interface is not what you're used to. It's not like using Google as a search engine. You get, your ads at the top. You can see if you're looking for someone, a profile on the side. It's exactly what you're used to. So you'd have a reluctance to change over to DuckDuckGo because it doesn't really look as you're used to, as well as it doesn't present the information how you're used to. And then we have what you call open authorization, which is an example is signing with Google or signing with Twitter or signing with Facebook. Usually we do this for convenience because you don't want to remember a username and password all the time, and you have so many accounts you need to remember. So why not just use open authorization? It's convenient, but on the other end, if you don't really trust the site that you're letting use your Google information, they can misuse the information that they get from the Google account. So the tricky part about open authorization is that once the authorization is granted, the application could keep collecting the information which is within a particular permission scope. So when these sites or applications request to use Google information to authenticate you, they're given what you call a capability token, which is like a token granting them to use and collect certain data that they need. So if, let's say, I own a particular site or application, and I would like to get as much data as I'm allowed to from Google, but I do not really need all that information to authenticate you. So I can specify in my token data that I don't really need just because I'm collecting, either to sell to a third party or to use however I want to use. So that those are some of the dangers with using open authorization on sites that are not really trusted. Then we have content customization. Here is where, when you're either on e-commerce sites or you're on social media, you'd like your content customized to you. You want, let's say if I'm interested in buying certain shoes, I want to see certain shoes at my size. So I give them, I'd like this size of shoes, so that's my size. I give them information on, if I'm on social media, I like, let's say cars. I want information on cars. I want information on cybersecurity. So all this data we give about ourselves, including our age and our demographic and where we are, our location, enables them to customize our pages to how we want them to look and our timelines, such that each time I log in, I get information that is curated just for me. It comes at the cost of giving away so much of your information unknowingly over time that you only once approved when you downloaded the application, but there is no continuous consent that is given. Then we have free apps and services that we sign up for. There's a common quote that if you're not paying for a commodity, then you're a commodity. If you're getting a free service or a free application, then definitely your data is going to be given off to third-party applications. That's why you can just search on Google cybersecurity news for the day. The minute I get into Instagram or Facebook, I see cybersecurity news that I haven't searched for, because your data is shared across multiple platforms. And then next, I'll just give you brief statistics on some data that we have. Next slide. So on the next slide, we see that from our study by the Accenture Strategy Report of 2018, 83% of global users would willingly share their data so that they can have a customized experience. And we look at some of the data they collect includes location, device type, history, demographic, and on-site behavior. So all this breaches our privacy over time, because with most applications and most platforms, you only agree to data once. And with every new upgrade, there is more data that is required. And we don't really go through, the end user license agreement to read exactly what data is being collected. So basically our privacy is breached. And that is it from me. I'll hand it over next to Caroline Gitonga to take you through the next section. Thank you.
Caroline, are you muted?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. And sorry, I was unmuted there, but good, we are back. And I want to thank Doreen and Anne for the concept they presented before me. My name is Caroline Gitonga, and in this session, I'll be taking you through prioritization between privacy and anonymity and some of the factors that are considered in that regard. And we'll also take a look at the rights regarded to the information we share with products, services, and organizations. So to get started, we've seen the distinction between the two concepts on privacy and anonymity and how they intersect with each other. But we can all agree that there is still a fine line between the two. And as it is, we can agree also that privacy and anonymity has more to do with more than just locking the door as you walk out of your house or wearing a mask when you're participating in an activism session. And so in that regard, we might ask ourselves then, what would be the more important concept than the other? And although there is no foolproof order of importance between the two concepts, we should acknowledge that the order of importance and prioritization would differ from one case or situation to another. So for example, in regards to privacy, it would be more prioritized in cases where the most important asset or the most important thing to the organization or the individual is regarding with the information shared about that person or about that organization. And we therefore then see people who are using most of the free applications and services that require access to this personal information would highly prioritize privacy over anonymity, because it is important, or the information they share is very critical to the services that they are being provided with. And we can relate with this, most of us, I'm sure, because in our day-to-day lives, especially now, even in the COVID era, we've seen the application of these services, ranging from banking applications on mobile and web platforms, transport and delivery services, the likes of Uber, Jumia, and Sandy. And we all see that in this regard, we don't really usually care about staying anonymous when we are on this platform, but more so in regarding how these organizations are collecting our data, how they are processing it, and whether they are sharing that data with other third parties without our knowledge. On the other hand, when it comes to anonymity, we see then it would be more prioritized in cases where the most important asset to that individual or organization is an identity that needs to be protected by keeping it separate from their day-to-day lives or their real identities in the real world. These cases are such as when you're giving reviews, either in organizations as employees or when you're giving feedback about certain products, you'll see that most users want to remain anonymous and therefore will use pseudonyms to give this feedback. Also in cases of investigative journalism, which involves risky information that would be of risk to their lives, then we see them prioritizing anonymity over privacy. And we further see this being prioritized by hackers, whistleblowers, activists, and people who participate in auctions and also charity. And so in that regard, we see that for sure, prioritizing these two will differ from one case to another. And then you should know what to do should you choose to prioritize privacy or anonymity. But in some cases, we'll also see individuals focusing on a balance of the two. So on what steps we can take in regards to building a strategy for prioritization, we have a few pointers that everyone can use. The first being having visibility over your digital footprint. So we are all victims to using services online or products online because of the convenience they present. But that leaves us with the risk of leaving too much of our information on the internet available for use by anyone. And so you can use tools like mine, which usually checks over the internet any information that is exposed either through sharing with an organization or through data breaches. And this will give you visibility by showing you the different data exposure points across all the different providers, products and services you've been using online. You can also use Have I Been Pwned, which is also another service that gives you information on whether your user accounts on different platforms have been breached and therefore risking exposure of that private information. The importance of having visibility over this digital footprint is that then after you know what is out there, you can decide what to do next. But you can ask yourself what your risk tolerance level is based on what you find out there, because you'll find that maybe what has been pwned is an identity that you use for just browsing here and there on the internet, and it's not really linked to your financial transactions. And therefore, in that regard, your risk tolerance level for that specific identity will be quite high because you don't use it for critical transactions or applications. But then if, say, the identity that has been pwned or the information that you find as having been exposed on mine is one that is tied to your core banking applications, then you'd see that your risk tolerance level for that reduces, and you'd like to take more actions by implementing controls and measures to reduce the amount of information known out there about that identity. And therefore, while doing this, as you're defining that risk tolerance level for each of the identified data points from the tools you've used for your digital footprint, then you would have to consider the wide spectrum of consequences that come with that unintended or unauthorized disclosure of your private information, or if it is in regards to anonymity, the de-anonymization of that identity. This wide spectrum of consequences could cover things like identity theft, reputational damage for both individuals and organizations, cyberbullying and online harassment, which has been on the rise because of the issue of anonymity, and also the aspect of physical safety and loss of lives. So with these consequences in mind, then, and your risk tolerance level, you would move ahead to determine a privacy strategy or anonymity strategy to help yourself or the organization improve that posture of their privacy by managing those risks that come from those potential consequences. So there are known best practices, some of which my colleague and Kangere will be showcasing later, as well as standards and frameworks that are built to help organizations as well as individuals build an effective strategy towards improving their cybersecurity and privacy postures. These frameworks are such as the NIST privacy framework that gives you tools and a step-by-step process of how to work towards attaining an improved privacy posture, as well as OWASP Top 10 Privacy Risks, the improved version of 2021, that lists down some of the top privacy risks that organizations should be on the lookout to and work to mitigate in regards to maintaining a good privacy posture. So once you put all these standards, best practices, and frameworks into consideration, then you would put that strategy to work and keep reviewing it periodically, like say every 2 years or so that you can also take into considerations other data points or other improvements in regards to how an organization processes data to make sure that the cybersecurity posture as well as the privacy posture of that individual or organization is continuously improving. With all that in mind, I'd like us to touch briefly on privacy as a human right. As we have seen In today, nations, countries are recognizing privacy as a critical human right, meaning that the irresponsible use of private information that has been shared by users of services is punishable by law. And this is a commendable thing to the nations that are adopting this, because by making this enforceable by law, we are continuing to improve the cybersecurity postures of individuals and hence further the cybersecurity posture of the nation. And as such, there's a need for us all to educate ourselves in this regard to the different data protection, privacy regulations in place over the globe, and more specifically in our country, Kenya, where we have the Data Protection Act that borrows heavily from the General Data Protection Regulation of the EU. So in these two regulations, they recognize privacy as a human right. And in this regard, it also defines other rights that any user of technological product or service is reserved to. And these are important for both individuals as users of these products, because they can be used as a checklist to make sure that the products and services are using are compliant, and they will take care of the data they share with them. And in regards to organizations, then they are advertently required to be in compliance with these rights. These rights include the right to be informed, which states that if a service or company is collecting data about a user, then that user should be notified about the data that is collected about them, how that data is going to be processed, stored, secured, and also in regards to whether that data will be shared with third parties or not. The other right is the right to access, meaning that should I want to know what a service, what kind of information a service has about myself, I should be given the controls or measures to allow me to view that data in a seamless manner. The right to rectification allows users to correct or rectify any information held by organizations in the case that the information previously shared is no longer true. The right to erasure as well allows me as a user of a service or a previous user to have the data they had collected about myself deleted permanently or temporarily. And this should also be one of the things we look out for as we read the privacy policies of the services we look or we are going to use. The other rights, such as the data portability, enable a user to hop from one service provider to another without restriction. And this will also, we also see this improving competition among these companies and making sure that they all implement better ways of handling data to avoid that issue of portability and to make sure that they retain as many customers as possible. The right to objection goes in regards to the processing of their data. So should they have a clause that the data we are collecting is processed in a certain way, a user can object to that or limit the processing of that data to a certain level. So with this in mind, I urge all of us as cybersecurity enthusiasts to continue educating ourselves on these regulations and the standards available to help us better build privacy posture. And for other techniques we can use, I'll welcome Anne Kangere to take us through that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. My name is Anne Kangere, and I will be taking you through some of the mechanisms that we can use to enforce better privacy and anonymity online. As much as Caroline has mentioned about the regulations that have been put in place to ensure that we are private online, attackers are every day finding ways to breach privacy, and we as individuals, as well as businesses and organizations, should make it a daily task to ensure that our privacy is protected while on the internet. I'm going to take you through a few mechanisms. These are not exhaustive. This is just a tip of the iceberg. And there's actually so much more than we can discuss in one session. The first point is using Tor or onion routing. Tor is the onion router. And for us as individuals, searching the web is a daily activities for many of us. And as such, it is also a hotbed for tracking and potential cyber attacks. And the most commonly used browsers today are one of my favorite, Google Chrome. We have Apple Safari, Microsoft Edge, Opera, Firefox, among many others. But as cybersecurity enthusiasts, we should consider using the Onion router if we want to truly keep our browsing private. The Onion router or the Tor project is an open source browser, which is privacy focused. With this, it creates tunnels rather than establishing a direct connection to websites. And with the tunnels, it prevents users from being tracked through traffic analysis or IP addresses. And this is a technique for anonymous communication over networks. And in an onion network, messages are encapsulated in layers of encryption, which is analogous to the layers of an onion, why it's called onion routing. The Tor browser is, however, very slow. It can be slow sometimes, and traditional browsers will be preferred because they are faster. And when you're using the traditional browsers, by traditional browsers, I mean the browsers that we are mostly used to, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and Microsoft Edge, we can be able to still keep our browsing private, which is my second point on securing the browser that we use. And the first point when it comes to securing the browsers that we're using is disabling the track feature on the browser. And this is just telling the website and third-party partners that you do not want to be tracked. You do not want them to see what you're doing online. And then again, it has been mentioned before in passing about cookies. Sometimes when we access some sites, we are given the option of accepting cookies or declining them. And sometimes declining the cookie does not give you access to the site, and probably it's something that is urgent or important that you need to do. And you can enable the cookies at the moment, but just make sure that you clear the cache every now and then to make sure that the cookies are cleared from the browser and from your system. And then there's the concept of hypertext transfer protocol, which is HTTP versus HTTP secure. The secure option uses an extra layer of protection or of encryption to enable secure communication between the browser and the server, making sure that the communication in there between is encrypted. And if an attacker were to be able to intercept the traffic, they would not be able to see the content in plain text. So every time you're browsing every time you're accessing sites on your browser, just make sure that the sites that you're trying to visit are HTTP secure. And then we have a list of browser plugins that you can use to ensure that you're secure online. I have a few HTTPS everywhere, which is available on Firefox. It's available on Chrome, Opera, and it's created by the Tor project, the one that I mentioned earlier. And this is to expand HTTPS encryption to any websites, and thus improving your security, the security of your communication with them. And then we have NoScript Security Suite. This is a plugin that is endorsed by Edward Snowden as a means to combat government surveillance. It is built for Firefox and any other Mozilla-based browsers. And this is for disabling active content such as JavaScript, which may be used to track your online activity. We have others like Disconnect, Facebook Container, and Blur, which is available for Firefox and Chrome. We have another one called Privacy Badger. All these plugins and many others can be used to ensure that you browse privately on your browsers. And again, you should utilize private search engines. The search engines that most of us are used to are Google, which is actually the one that is used by the majority of people. We have Yahoo and Bing, but these search engines make use of algorithms based on your data to provide what they call personalized experiences. But with these search engines, browsing histories and queries can be used to create a profile that details your history. It details what websites you click, what sites you visit. It can be used to look at what you're interested in and many more. And this over time becomes invasion of privacy. For instance, I think it's been mentioned earlier, but when you go online and purchase, let's say for instance, a shoe, and then all of a sudden you're being served ads about shoes on all the social media sites you visit. When you go to Instagram, you're served ads on shoes. This is all because of the cookies that have been saved and because of using these search engines that create a profile on you. So to prevent such data from being collected and from being logged and to prevent such invasion of privacy, we should all consider using private search engines. We have a couple of them, but the ones that I used mostly, we have DuckDuckGo, we have StartPage, and we have another one called Saks, among many others. And with these private search engines, we can be able to make sure that we browse privately and that our data is not collected and logged to create personalized profile about us. And then there is no denying that public Wi-Fi hotspots are very convenient, especially today where many of us are working outside of the office. You probably get an urgency outside of the office, you need to send something, and you probably go sit there at Java and there's a free Wi-Fi hotspot and you find yourself using it. But by using this public Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi hotspots, we are placing our privacy and security at risk. Because the problem with this is you do not need authentication to go to these sites, and neither do attackers. And if there's authentication needed, it's publicly available and attackers can be able to get it as well. And when an attacker is inside that public Wi-Fi, they have the opportunity to perform what is called man-in-the-middle attacks. And with this, they can eavesdrop or listen to or check on what you're doing and potentially steal your information, as well as even manipulating traffic in a way to send you to malicious websites. And with that, your data can be breached. And with public Wi-Fi, the attackers or hacker, or as we call them, hackers, can set up their own rogue Wi-Fi with the same name, with the same credentials, and when you connect to it, they have access to everything that you're accessing on the internet. So my advice is not to use public Wi-Fi at all. The alternative is to just continue using our 4G, 5G today connection through our mobile devices when possible. And if you need an internet connection away from your phone, let's say on your laptop, you can create a mobile Wi-Fi hotspot for your laptop and access the internet with it. But then again, sometimes it's an urgency. You probably don't have the data to create a hotspot for yourself, and there's a public Wi-Fi hotspot, and you need to do something urgently. There's layers of security that you can add on top of the public Wi-Fi to be able to access the internet privately. And one of the most common is using a VPN, which is a virtual private network. With virtual private networks, you create a secure tunnel between your browser and the web servers. And any data that is sent through using a VPN is encrypted before it's sent to the destination server. And your IP address or your identity is masked, such that even if an attacker was able to intercept that communication, they would not be able to know who you are or what you're browsing or sharing on the internet. But one problem with VPNs is, how do you know which one to use? There's very many options. We have premium and free VPNs. Premium and paid services are often more trustworthy, but sometimes, again, you do not have the money or the capability to create your own VPN, and you're lured into using the free option, which sometimes are slower and will offer limited bandwidth. But again, because it's a VPN, you'll think, oh, anyway, let me just use it. But as I think Doreen mentioned, if something is free, you're not the customer, you're the product. So if you use the free versions, there's definitely a way that the provider is going to get profit on, and this may include tracking and selling your data. So it's very advisable if you can just subscribe to a premium VPN service, or if you're technically able, you can set up your own VPN service. My next point is some kind of repeated advice, and it has gotten boring over time. But again, it's worth saying, use complex passwords, use passphrases, as this is the first line of defense if you have to secure your online accounts. Today, many vendors are actively preventing us from using simple combinations that are easy to break, but there's still many of us that use very weak passwords. Your password is password 12 or QWERTY123, or your name or your birthday. These are very easy to break, especially if you use dictionary words, and most of our names are actually in the dictionary, and this can be broken easily using brute force attacks or dictionary attacks. And we should make our passwords very complex and not repeating passwords across different platforms. I know it gets difficult to remember complicated passwords when you're using multiple online services, and this is where password managers or vaults come in. Password managers, I'd call them software that is used to securely record your credentials, that is your username and your password that you use to access your online services. And then they store them somewhere in a vault safely, and it is secured using a master password that is very hard to break. And with this, you don't really need to remember each and every of your passwords. And these vaults may also generate strong and complex passwords on your behalf, which again, you don't need to remember. And it can change old passwords for you and weak ones for you and generate stronger passwords. Again, even just having a strong password is not enough. You need to add another layer of security on top of that, which is multi-factor authentication, which is my next point, enabling multi-factor authentication, or MFA. MFA is a security technology that will require you to provide multiple verification factors to verify your identity before logging in to access a resource. So rather than just asking for your username and your password, it will require a combination of additional 2 or more independent credentials, and this will decrease the likelihood of a successful cyber attack. With multi-factor authentication, the goal here is to have a layered defense, which will make it more difficult for unauthorized people to gain access to a target. So if one factor is broken, if they're able to break your password, or they're able to guess your password or get your password, there's still 1 or more barriers to breach before they can successfully break to you. And by the time they break the other factors, you already know that they've already broken one, and you're able to change that factor that they broke. Another point is reviewing privacy policies carefully. I know it's sometimes a tedious job, and we are inherently lazy. terms and conditions, but it is very important to review the privacy policies before accepting the terms and conditions of services that we of the products that we are going to access. This is because in these privacy policies, there could be hidden information. You probably think you're giving out your data to be able to access a certain service, but then again, inside there, they probably want you to give them consent to selling your data to a third party, and you do not know. So it's very important to review the privacy policies carefully before accepting the terms and conditions for any product that you want to use. Another point is encryption of communication. And by this, I want to talk about email. Our email accounts are often the pathway that provides links to all our other valuable accounts. We find that we give our emails when accessing our banking services, we give our emails when accessing our social media sites. Every other service that we want to use, most of them will require your email address. And if you found someone probably reading on your desktop or your laptop, reading your emails, that would be invasion of privacy, yeah? But then again, most email services like Gmail are not that much secure because the security that has been enforced there is of the channel that the email is going through. And once an attacker is able to intercept that channel, they can be able to see your message in plain text. So it is very important to add an additional layer of encryption on top of the one that already exists. We can use third-party providers like PGP, pretty good privacy like Mailvelope, to ensure that the messages or the emails that we're sending from point A to point B are encrypted, such that even if an attacker is able to intercept the communication channel, they will not see our message in plain text. So even if they get the information, it will be rendered useless to them. And then on my last point, I want to talk about compartmentalizing our digital life. What I mean by this is keeping our work separate from our life. I spoke about emails and having one email that is a gateway to all other services. With compartmentalizing our digital life, we should have different emails or different phone numbers for different services. So if it's your work email, it should be for your work only. Have a separate email that can be used to subscribe to social media channels, have a separate email for other subscriptions. This way you're able to destroy or ban any email address that might be problematic or that has been breached. And if one email address is breached or one of your sites is breached, they cannot be able to propagate to another service. So if one part of your life, of your digital life, is breached, they are not able to propagate to other parts of your digital life or personal life. Sorry. So to end this conversation, I will end with a quote by Sun Tzu Cyber, The Art of Cyber War, that says, "A cyber warrior allows that which is needed, and a cyber master questions why it is needed." So it is our responsibility to make sure that we are cyber masters and question everything. There's something called zero trust. Trust nothing, question everything. Do not trust anything at all. Everything that you're given to your plate, you need to question it and just go into the details. Like if a site is asking for your phone number, why do they need my phone number? Like for instance, in real life, in our day-to-day activities, you're a student, you want to access the library, and then at the entrance, they
I think
I think we lost Anne. So
yeah, sorry about that.
yeah,
And if you're listening, we can't hear you.
but basically that was the last slide explaining or giving us a parting shot. And at this juncture, we would like to hand it back to you, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you, AK. Thank you, Kabi and DJ. You guys are doing an amazing job with the Fossec. And just to plug you, please follow their blog. They run a blog and they post really amazing stuff. So maybe Anne or any other member of the group, you can share your blog post, the link to your blogs so that people can follow. But yes, it's been an amazing session. If you have any questions, please do raise your hands. Sorry, Nancy, for taking over. I know this wasn't the plan, but I just wanted to thank everyone for all the speakers that we had today. Thank you to the Fossec. Thank you to Leo, and thank you to Trend Micro, Rogers, and Nick for joining us and for sponsoring us. Thank you for being our partners. It's been amazing to have you. It's a new partnership and we're looking forward to what's to come in the future. So yeah, it's that time of the year where we launch our Hackface Ctf. And today we are, yes, Kathy, it's been an impressive presentation and the speakers are very articulate. So thank you guys. Yeah, but as I was saying, we're launching the Hackface Ctf as usual. It's an annual thing. And this year we are so happy to have collaborated with Aspire by ICRAL Innovation Hub. And please sign up, register as a group. You can, if you want to do it individually, you can register yourself as a group and tackle it yourself. The people who created it said that this is nothing you have ever seen before. The challenges are unique. And so we are excited to have you taking them up and just try and tackle them. So the CTF, I've posted the link on the chat. So please sign up and it will officially begin tomorrow at 10 p.m. and it will officially close on Wednesday next week at 10 p.m. and winners will be announced officially at our last Hackfest of the year, which will be hosted next week, Thursday, same time, same place. So thank you so much, guys. Nancy, let me give it back to you.
Thank you so much, Laura. I would say a big thanks to all our presenters, the panelists, Leo. It's been an amazing session. Also to our attendees, thank you so much for staying through, and we believe it's been informative. And as Laura said, the CTF has started, so you can share with your teammates, share with your friends, share with your network that the Hackface Ctf is on and they should register. So at this point, I don't have anything else to say. So maybe I'll take it back to you, Laura. You can end the session for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. Eve, do you want to close?
It's just a thank you note, Laura. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending to today's session. I think we learned a lot about XDR and the Fossec. And there was Leo also. Thank you so much. These were quite insightful sessions. That's it from me. Have a good night, everyone. See you on next week, Thursday.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Okay, good night, everyone. See you next week.